Hey everybody, this is Perch. I've talked about cost and distribution being the problem. I've talked about how at the end of the day we can fix quality, you can fix where comics are, but you do have this sticking point where 4.99 for what feels like a pretty thin book is tough. It's tough for people to wrap their head around, and I think that's going to be brought into really sharp focus with the upcoming inflation and recession and everything else. Where I was talking to a friend over in the in Marvel and the likelihood. He's like, we're going to raise prices. I'm like, no, no. He's like, no, no. There, one, there's some aspects of the business they need to show a higher profit on. Two, inflation. They're going to use that as a way to say, yeah, we got to bump this stuff. Everything's got to be 4.99. It's got to be there. And yeah, we're raising prices. I'm like, well, when's this going to take effect? He's like, by this time next year, by next summer, 4.99 is going to be the price. And I'm like, I'm trying to wrap my head around. I'm like, I can't believe that. But yeah, I guess, I guess I can believe that. I absolutely can believe that. I mean, based on the history, a lot of stuff is 4.99, but just bump it all there. That's the new floor, and then you head north on slightly bigger issues. During the same call, he's like, yeah, people are noticing or at least remembering the fact that DC did all these anniversary specials for $10 and it seemed to do well, and it spiked the numbers. So it's like, we're going to be that's going to be part of our 2022 late 2023 publishing plan is to start putting out a lot more kind of bigger books with some, he's like, you can get some filler material for the back half of the book and then bump that thing up to $10, and you're going to see a lot more of those too. So it's like, wow, what a great future we're all living in. But anyway, cost is a problem. I mean, no doubt about it. I think as if this does come to pass, if this is what happens, cost is going to be the major problem. I think distribution's still a major problem. I mean, because and especially at that cost point. I mean, the problem is as you raise cost, you're narrowing your audience, and as you narrow your audience, you've got to get an audience somewhere else. And if you're not distributing anywhere else, then you boxed yourself into a corner. And then if the content inside is not appealing to either the traditional audience or a new audience, I mean, congratulations, that's a trifecta of shit right there you've accomplished. But anyway, so this viewer writes in sort of about cost, about price increases. Hey Perch, you just made a video about price increases linked to cost and distribution. How much of the price increase is due to not having paid third-party ad sales anymore? By the way, quick answer before we get to the rest of the mail is when the prices started going up initially, yes, there was that. It was linked to some extent. Say, hey, it's a direct market. We're putting specialty paper. There's, it's more of a collectible. The ads were seen as not icky, but just distracting to the art of the book. And so it's like, so let's get rid of those annoyances of ads, and people pay a little bit of a premium for it. And so we're going to go to 75 cents to like $1. We're going to go to $1.25 in some cases, and people will be okay with that because they're not getting ads. There was that sense, but today, no. Initially, what got the ball rolling was exactly as you say. The lack of ads definitely was one of the factors. But now, several years later, 25 years later, it's that price has just climbed into orbit on its own, and the ads have been independent. But let's get to the rest of your mail here. It says in the 80s, 90s, there were ads for things like candy, model kits, and Nintendo games. I recall DC having a ton of ads in the 90s for things like CDs from Warner Brothers Records, Time Life Encyclopedia subscriptions, etc. Presumably, these ads from sister companies were still paid fairly to DC. They were. There was a desire to leverage your parent company's material in ads, but it wasn't, you didn't get price breaks or anything like that. But now, all the comics in recent memory only have house ads utilizing the same amount of pages that used to have paid ads. Do house ads actually drive sales? Is there a good reason for them to exist and take up so many pages? House ads. And real quick, what's a house ad? So a house ad is absolutely something where you're getting at a discount because house ads typically nobody is paying anything. to anybody. And the house ad would be like you're reading Fantastic Four, and there's a big one-page promotion in there for an issue of Spider-Man or something that Marvel is also putting out this month. So basically, you're advertising your own product. So it's a house ad. Anyway, why don't other companies advertise in the periodicals anymore? And does the reason tie into the vicious cycle of poor niche distribution? Absolutely. If ads returned, would prices go down? So, if ads returned, maybe let me answer the question a different way. If ads returned, should prices go down? Yes. Yes, because you'd be supplementing the comic with, money from somewhere else, and that should have a corresponding, reduction in price. I think it would be reasonable for if a comic book was putting out ads that the publisher could forego their cut and live completely off the ads, and that would, allow for probably at least, $1.50, $2 in margin in some cases to come off the top, and you could see a significant price reduction. Would they do that? Will they do that? The answer is probably no. I think if they started running ads again, it would be you'd get a very nominal price cut or none. You'd get the explanation of, hey, we're not going to increase prices, so we're going to put ads in. Because no one's going to give up that small amount of money. In many ways, that thin amount of money is driving the P&L of the company, and it's not big. And so they're stuck a little bit in I can't give up even the little amount because it'll look really bad. But it's not, the money I am making isn't significant enough to really do something dramatic and out of the box. So, I'm just going to kind of continue to milk out what I can. A bad result. But overall, distribution is an issue because the challenge you have here is that for ads to be run in comics, the comic has to be an appealing property. Now, note for a minute, advertising companies do not give any shits at all about how woke the comic is. They don't care if some YouTuber out there is going like, Carol Manvers. No, nobody cares. Not the advertisers. They do not care. They care about one factor, and that is the circulation numbers. If I'm going to run an ad in this book, then how many eyeballs are going to see it? And if you say, you can run an ad in this comic and it's got a distribution of, 35,000, they will go, well, okay, that's not a very big number. Who's the target market? Is the target market, like, who are you reaching with this comic? And this gets to a sticky point because the comic publishers either, most of them do not know who their target market is and legitimately do not know. They don't have a way to measure it and they've stopped seemingly caring. Or they will have to admit a very uncomfortable fact, which is the majority of sales and purchases of their books are being propped up by people who are 40 to 55, typically men. And that demographic in comics is probably not what they want to take advertising dollars for. It's like, hey, let's, do we want to advertise for, myopia cures for reading glasses and things like that? Like, do you really want to open up a issue of X-Men and, come across something like some kind of like, hey, don't forget that you need to get a colonoscopy every now and then. Like nobody wants to see those ads inside of a comic book, but that's the target demo that you're going after at this point. That and like rich people stuff with the price of comics, it's like, hey, how would you like to, buy a new Porsche? It'd be a very weird collection of ads based on the market that's actually buying it. But I guarantee you, Marvel and DC do not want to come right out and say, yeah, our biggest buying block is, fairly affluent. Well, not. I mean, just people 40 to 55 who have some level of disposable income, probably mostly male, probably mostly white. I mean, imagine that. Imagine Marvel having to come out and say that. Like that, there's no way anyone wants to say that company. But that's the reality. So, but if you're going to sell advertising, you have to bring who's your buying audience, who's the market that I'm going to reach with these ads, and what's my numbers. And right now, the audience that they're reaching is probably not the audience Marvel wants to admit for advertising. And on top of that, the numbers suck in terms of being able to sell these things. What advertisers are looking for are something that's getting millions of copies out into the hands of people. They're looking for circulation like that. There's been a resurgence in advertising on radio because I have no idea. People are getting tired of subscription radio, whatever else, but radio is undergoing this brief kind of resurgence. And the advertising numbers, to make it work, they're having to prove, and in many cases they are, that they're able to reach millions of listeners, millions with an M. And that's the game. The ad numbers are fairly depressed at this point. You know that you can't pull as much as you used to because there's too much technology out there that advertisers know allow you to ignore the ads or get away from them. And so people are. I mean, it's a tougher game, and it's a very tough game for comics because they again they don't have the numbers. Their target demo is off. So I think it would be good. But all that said, I think that one thing we're seeing is this partnership, for example, with DC and Fortnite, and then Marvel and Fortnite. Why can't Marvel have sponsorships that are still ads, but they're different kind? Like, is Fortnite paying for this crossover? The answer is no. By the way, that may be a clue right there. Can you pick up pop culture items, movies, games, music? Can you do enough to tie them to the comics in some way that the advertising gets boosted up? You have more targeted ads. Can you actually get your digital? I mean, by the way, what would completely invalidate everything I said is if you had a coherent digital strategy that was pulling in heavy numbers from the digital side, and then you could tap into a whole different format of ads, which would be healthy. But again, you would have to have numbers on those in digital, and you don't. Comics do not have those numbers today, so that continues to be a problem. So anyway, all this is just to say, advertising should be able to help, but there's a couple major factors in there that get in the way of that. And the biggest one being is just it's not big enough. The numbers aren't big enough, so it does become this self-fulfilling prophecy of the numbers aren't big enough. So therefore, we're not in enough places. So the advertising is not compelling. So we have to make our money a different way. So we raise the price, which in theory, cuts more people out. So the numbers go down further, and you're racing to the bottom at that point. That's where things are kind of at. Anyway, great question. Thanks for answering it. Curious what people think. What kind of advertisers are you going after for a 40 to 55 market? I mean, Arby's? Yeah. Thanks for listening.